Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. An original adaptation written and read for you by Jon Buckeridge. Part 11. Raining Trees. In the aftermath of the Battle of the Blighted Land, Gawain stayed in the village a few days longer. The people were much more friendly to him now that he was something of a local hero, and he helped them to remove their spiked palisades and fill in the ditches around the town. "Shan't be needing these any longer," Stanley almost sang as they worked, and Gawain was thrilled to see how much the spirits of the little man had changed since he'd met him just a few short days ago. The question Arthur had asked him sprung into his mind. Have you made the lives of people around you better? Have you left the world a better place than you found it? Gawain knew that for these folks at least he had, and that felt good. Still, time was moving on, and Gawain had to move with it. It was now late November, and he was still no closer to finding any sign of the Green Chapel. After a lengthy farewell to the villagers, he mounted Gringolet and off he rode. As he rode down the hill, past the barrow of the beasts of the Blighted Land, he was certain he saw a cloaked and hooded figure looking down at the mound as if in mourning. It was just in the corner of his vision, and as Gawain turned to look properly, there was nothing there. "Your brain is starting to abandon you," said the voice in his head. "But then you weren't using it all that much anyway." Chuckling to himself, Gawain and Gringolet trotted on. For several days he rode inland and north, calling at every village, farm and town to see if anyone had any knowledge of the Green Knight or the Green Chapel, but none did. Sometimes he found an inn to sleep in, but most of the time he slept outside by the fire, and as December rushed to greet him, he was all the more grateful for the craft and effort of Guinevere and her ladies in making such a fine, rich cloak. More than a week had passed since he'd left the village of the Blight, and if he was honest, Gawain was starting to lose hope that he would ever find the Green Chapel in time. The country was just so big for one man to cover alone, and no one he'd met had even the slightest inkling of what he was asking after. As he rode along the forest tree line in the afternoon sun, beginning to pick his way back south, he mused on the matter. "You shall just have to keep—" The tree hit him right across the chest. Gawain was thrown quite clear of Gringolet and landed with an almighty crash on his back. His armour helped to soften the blow, but still he felt a pang in his neck as muscles were strained, and a ringing sounded somewhere in his ears. From what seemed like a long way away he heard hooves as Gringolet darted away, but Gawain could not call him back. He was struggling to catch his breath, which had been knocked soundly out of him. As the world pitched and rolled like the deck of a ship, Gawain looked around him to spot the branch he must have ridden under which had unseated him so soundly. It was at that moment that he realized it was not him that had hit the tree, but the tree that had hit him. He realized this because he could see another one sailing towards his still prone body on a perfect path to crush him. It was not a huge tree, no ancient oak or ash, but still it was a tree, soaring through the air, roots and all, directly for him. In his dazed mind, Gawain was just reflecting that trees really should not be in the air like that, when the voice within him screamed, "Move!" and he did. He did not yet trust his legs to hold him, but rolling to the side he managed to get clear, and the tree came crashing down exactly where he had been just a moment ago. "Run!" yelled the voice in his head, and scrambling to his feet, Gawain began an unsteady stagger. As he stumbled along, he heard another crash behind him, a third tree. "Find cover!" barked the inner voice, and Gawain saw a rocky outcrop not far ahead. Scrambling towards it, he threw himself into its shelter and breathed hard. His head was still spinning, his chest felt like an anvil had been dropped on it, and adrenaline was spiking through him, making him jitter and shake. Taking a deep breath, Gawain began wrestling his body back under control. A lot of warriors' training, alongside all the fighting and riding and tactics, was about just how to do this. In moments of danger and panic, and combat was mostly danger and panic in Gawain's experience, it was the clear-headed man who would win the day. Unfortunately, the training he'd been given had not been designed to account for a flurry of trees, actual trees, raining down upon him. There was another almighty crash as a tree slammed against the outcrop he was sheltering behind, and from beside him Gawain heard a whickering whinny. Looking round, he saw that Gringolet, intelligent creature that he was also sheltering behind the craggy outpost. "And he got here much quicker than you," said the voice in his head. Taking the horse's reins, he stroked his neck, hoping to calm him. You are a wise and clever creature, Gawain murmured to him. Somehow having a simple task to do like stroking the horse helped Gawain focus his mind. The panic within him didn't lessen, but it definitely took a seat a little further back in his queue of priorities. When the next tree crashed down hitting the rocks behind him, Gawain was no longer overwhelmed by fear. You need to see what's hurling trees at you, said his inner voice. Taking a few quick breaths, Gawain crept to the edge of the rocky outcrop and peered round it. Perhaps 100 paces away from him, in the shadows of the tree line, a huge figure was wrapping its arms around a tree and heaving on it. The tree gave a creak of complaint, but with a powerful push from its massive legs and a snapping of roots, the figure pulled it right out of the ground. Turning smoothly, it sent the tree soaring into the sky. It was at this moment that Gawain got a good look at the creature. It was hard to tell at this distance, but Gawain judged it to be about 10 feet tall, and its skin was mottled blue-grey. In some places the beast was covered with what looked like shaggy fur, in other places it seemed to have rough hide. Despite the shadow of the trees, Gawain could see it was shaped like a man, but its hands seemed flatter and wider and much bigger than they would be on a normal person. Was it an ogre? A troll? Gawain didn't have any more time to look, though, as the tree the creature had just hurled came crashing down. Ducking back behind the rock, Gawain weighed up his options. He could jump on Gringolet's back and ride out of there as quickly as the horse would carry him, but that creature seemed to be a pretty handy shot with a thrown tree, and Gawain didn't doubt that it would hit them long before they got out of range. Still, fighting the hulking thing head-on was a far from attractive option when it had already proved itself strong enough to uproot a tree and throw it at him. What would Arthur do? Came the voice in his head. And remembering the greeting Arthur had given the Green Knight when it had arrived at court, he decided it was worth a try. "Hallo!" he called to the creature. "I come in peace." He scrambled about him looking for a tree branch like the Green Knight had carried. Fortunately, the creature had been kind enough to give him no shortage of trees, and tearing a leafy branch from one, he waved it above his head in a sign of peace. "Hallo!" he tried again. There was a moment of quiet, and Gawain braved a look from behind his shelter. The creature was standing stock still, staring in his direction. Cautiously, still holding the branch before him like it could ward off danger, Gawain stepped out. "I come in peace," he said again, speaking calmly as if to a skittish horse. "I am sorry if I've trespassed on your land. I meant no offence." He took a few hesitant paces towards the creature, but it made no move. In fact, it made no sign that it understood him at all, just stared at him from beneath heavy brows within the shadow of the trees. Gawain took a few more paces and tried again, using smaller words. "Me friend," he said, waving the branch as a sign of peace. "You no throw trees." Still the creature stared and gave no sign of understanding, and Gawain went back to basics. He put his free hand on his chest and patted it. "Gawain," he said, by way of introduction. "I know exactly who you are," the creature replied, and Gawain jumped halfway out of his skin. It had made no sign of understanding, but suddenly here it was, speaking. It was a deep, guttural voice, but refined, and Gawain was shocked to realize intelligent. "Now, are you going to take a turn throwing that thing at me?" He gestured towards the branch with those massive hands. "Or is there more to discuss?" Gawain was still rocked by the realization the creature was anything more than a slathering monster, and he spoke the first thing that came to his mind. "You tried to kill me!" It wasn't a commanding opening to negotiations, and it wasn't helped by the fact that it had come out high and squeaky with a note of outrage. The creature didn't seem to care, though. "And we'll do so again," it said. It was so casual, so matter-of-fact, that Gawain wasn't sure what to say next. Fortunately, the creature went on. "It's nothing personal," said the figure. "Just something that has to happen." Again, that casual tone shook Gawain. "Why?" he asked, not caring how his voice sounded this time. The creature shrugged. "Does it matter? You'll still die." "It does to me," said Gawain, taking a step forward. As he did, the sun glinted off a section of his armour and the light bounced onto the figure before him. There was a hissing sound as it touched the creature's skin and it darted out of the way. Crouching out of the beam of light, it picked up a rock from the ground and hurled it in Gawain's direction. But Gawain was already gone, dropping his branch and herring away for the rocks. He still had no idea why the creature was trying to kill him, but now he knew exactly what it was. A troll. Trolls and sunlight do not mix, and that explained why it had stuck to the tree line, and why it hadn't just followed Gawain out to his stand of rocks and killed him there. So the good news was he was safe for now, but the bad news was that as soon as the sun went down, he'd be done for. It also put paid to any plans of running. Trolls could move fast, and it would cover far more ground by night than he could cover in what little of the day was left, and the winter nights are long, plenty of time for it to find him. So, he would have to fight. "But you shall have to fight smart," said the voice in his head. Glancing at the sun as it moved towards the horizon, Gawain began making preparations. Stripping off Guinevere's cloak, he set about buffing every piece of armour he was wearing, making sure there was as much shine as possible. His shield was not metal, but the lacquer on it was smooth and glossy, so he buffed that too, and strapped it around Gringolet's neck, so it hung at the horse's chest. "Just be ready when I call," he muttered to the horse. Taking his sword in his left hand, he picked up the great green axe in his right. He figured this weapon, made by a giant force of nature itself, should be more than capable of delivering damage to the troll. Rolling his shoulders back, he took a few quick breaths and stepped out from cover. Immediately, a massive stone splintered on the rocks by his head, and Gawain dove aside. "Oh, good," said the voice in his head. "He switched to rocks." Gawain darted forward, each time sidestepping the stones as they were thrown. The sun blazed off his armour, bouncing back at the beast and blinding him. Gawain kept his sword blade angled carefully to reflect the sun at the troll's eyes wherever he moved, and the creature's throws went wide. On and on Gawain came, always keeping the sun shining at the troll, but at the tree line he was forced to stop. To strike at the troll, he would have to cross into the tree line, but if he did that, he would lose the protection of the sunlight, the only advantage he had. He halted at the edge of the shadow, and through its flinches at the reflected light, the troll let out a laugh. "You're done, lad," the creature crowed. "You can't come here to me, and I can't come there to you. But soon the sun will go down, and then you're done." Gawain said nothing. The troll was quite right, but then Gawain had known that. Keeping the sun on his sword and angled at the creature, he let out a whistle. From behind the rocks, Gringolet whinnied and came racing towards him, Gawain's shield glistening on his chest. The light from the pentangle shone straight at the troll, and with that second source of light in place, Gawain stole his moment to step into the shadow. In the end, the fight was quick. It had to be. Gawain had the brief window it took for Gringolet to reach them before the sun would stop shining on the shield and his advantage was over. But as with the Battle of the Blighted Land, the preparation he had made before won the war for him. In the moment of shock Gringolet had brought, the troll hunched down onto its haunches and covered its eyes. If it had run back into the forest, he would have escaped and Gawain would be done for. But perhaps it was not so intelligent after all. Or perhaps it was just that he had not had the same training to overcome panic as Gawain. Either way, it made no difference, and Gawain's axe met its mark. As he had expected, the Green Knight's craftsmanship bit deep even into trollhide, and the creature lay still. Gawain let out a shaking breath and went to Gringolet to check his faithful friend was all right. Again, tending the horse steadied his own nerves, and his body began to calm. As it did, his brain ran over the events of the last hour and what the troll had said to him, and a creeping concern crawled over his calm. He felt a shiver run down him from the back of his neck to the base of his spine, and his breath caught in his throat. He wasn't certain, but from what the creature had said, he had a sneaking suspicion that something had sent this troll to attack him. He thought of the hooded and robed figure he'd glimpsed at the Wirral and the Blight, and his inner voice asked him, "If they could send one troll after you, what's to stop them sending two?" Gawain retrieved his cloak, mounted Gringolet, and rode on. He did not stop to sleep that night. Thank you for listening. Sir Gawain and the Green Knight is a Settle Stories commission. Written and read for you by Jon Buckeridge. Story consultant was Miriam Sarin. Music was Tectonic by Saedra, downloaded via Uppbeat. It was a Parable Arts production.